Uh, One thing that I like College of Architecture did uh, for us was, as I mentioned, it opened so many doors. And yeah, I do like sign fabrication. But the moment like you go meet a new client and they know, oh, you're an architect by education, and you have a master in architecture. It brings like so much more trust, and it makes it so much easier for us to get bigger projects. And that's definitely a plus. Um, Maybe if someone wants to go next.
I'll go next. Yeah, so I also agree. Am I going on here? I can't tell. But yeah, so for me, it's kind of the same where it's like, so I'm a freelancer. And when I first graduated, I just kind of took, a year for myself. We kind of talk about taking care of yourself. And when I graduated, I just was like, what exactly do I want to be doing? Like, where do I want to be? What is like my actual goal? Because I'd focused so much on school and it like took a lot to get through it. And I did learn a lot. I also did a study abroad. I actually went with the industrial design program. I started as an industrial design major. I forgot to mention that. And I did like their first round of study abroad when they went to Asia. And so I went to Korea and Beijing. And I also just went to Japan on my own, which was really big for me. And so when I graduated, I was like, I want to travel. This is like what's important. And I focused on that. I was like, what do I have to do to see what I want to see? And so I took the time where I had somebody had randomly reached out to me online, was like, do you want to model in Japan? And I was like, yeah, sure. I just jumped on an airplane. I didn't really know what I was doing. I didn't know where I was going. Like, probably not the safest thing to do. It literally happened through a DM. And I went and it ended up being legit. And I spent like half a year there right when I graduated. And then I came to New York also. And I just like went with the flow of things. Like I just took work where I could find it. And I think what's really important is that when something I realized is like when you first graduate, just like your degree means a lot. I think I was like really worried. I was like, oh, I need to go be an architect, especially for people who are about to graduate. 2020 is like a crazy unknown year. And I feel like 2021 is going to, keep being a little unknown. And so it's like, you don't have to go do something design related necessarily right away. Your life experiences will like influence your design greatly. Like having those experiences like are part of being a designer, and it's really important that you have that. And so whether it's like spending more time with your family or seeing something, I just really recommend that you like when you first graduate, it's not everything. You don't have to immediately go find a design job. It's like, especially since the pandemic started, I've like worked in kitchens. So now it's like my knowledge of like how a kitchen is set up for like, if I ever need to design a kitchen, it's like, it's there. It's like my experiences have allowed me to be also a better designer. And then also when people know that I have an architecture degree, it's kind of the same thing where it's like, everybody knows that you have to like dedicate yourself to this degree. And so in order to achieve it. And so whenever you do, decide like, oh, actually, this is kind of like the career path that I want to go on, your experiences will help you. So it's like, don't be afraid to just try things, figure things out when you first graduate. And yeah.
I think for me, the thing that was really beneficial is that an industrial design degree was very versatile. It's more versatile than I originally thought it would be. So I know when everyone is looking to graduate, they're wondering what can they do with their degree. And I think the versatility of the degree, where you have user experience, you have fabrication, you have user interface, and you have where you can work freelance, you can work for a small startup, you can work for a large corporation like I did, working for a 100 company where you're working more like with engineers and you're doing more technical design and mechanical design. So it's very versatile. So that's one of the main benefits that I feel like I got with this degree is the versatility. So that's my tidbit for that question.
I'll pick up there. I agree. I think that having an architecture degree really lends validation, as Shaya said. I think it instantly says to someone that you have really committed yourself to a path. And even if you don't end up on that path, like many of us haven't, ultimately in your profession, I think that it says that you've committed yourself to this time of your life and really accomplished something great. It also, like Shannon said, we traveled abroad, and that was really formative for me in my career. I'm a big believer in manifesting and designing your own life, and I think that it's possible. So traveling early on when I was a student, I think kind of lit the fire to be all over the world, and I have done that through my profession. So I think being able to tie those passions together, your passion for design and your passion, like Sarah said, for travel, or kind of going with the flow, I think can all be united as long as you do this intentionally. I'm a big believer also in setting goals. And so I set my 10-year goals and I work backwards from there. And I've been continually surprised that I can achieve 10-year goals in 2 years. So as long as I'm putting them out there and I'm like, universe, this is what I want to accomplish. And I set my mind to that. And it's amazing how you can drive your own path when you have those goals out there. So that would be just, if I could impart anything today, it would be just go in with intention and know what you want. And even if it's not something super solid right now, like I want to have an architecture firm by the time I'm 30, which was my goal, was to have a design firm by the time I'm 30. It could be anything, but I would just set your goals and go for it, because you can really design your life. That's it.
I will just add on to that. I totally agree, Laura, because when I came out of the program, we were about a year right before the 07-08 recession. And so I took an entry-level design job, and it was great. And I mean, looking back, it taught me that where you have to try at least and start before you can decide ultimately where you want to end up. So even if you get out and you do take an entry-level design position or whatever it may be, and it's not maybe the most glamorous, or you're not making the most money, or it's not the biggest firm, or every experience has ultimately led to where I am. And so I didn't actually know that I wanted to be in the marketing and communications world immediately. It actually, at my first architecture firm, I realized I was drawn to working with the marketing team. I loved the events. I loved the big, we did construction. I loved, those big picture design opportunities. But if I wouldn't have taken, an entry level, I don't know what they call it these days, associate, whatever the term is, but the beginning design role, I guess, I wouldn't have had that opportunity. So my point is, rather, it might not be the most glamorous, you might not know what you're doing, but just be open to it, and it will lead you ultimately to where you're supposed to end up.
Yeah, just start.
Yeah.
Start. Just go.
Yeah, I'll say too that it was really interesting to me, because as I started the industrial design program, we started to get into things like manufacturing and materials, and that side of it, I was like, I'm way in over my head. This is not necessarily what I think I want to do for the rest of my life. Until about, I think, end of junior year, senior year, we started to play with the UX side of things. And that's where I was like, okay, I'm really drawn to the digital aspect of this. But the same, I guess, mentality of finding the problem, solving, all that stayed the same, whether you're building a stool or you're building an app or whatever it was in that program. But then when I went to interview for my first job, and I walked them through our design processes, and I talked a little bit about the materials and methods, I actually ended up they said that they thought I'd be better as a project manager than a digital designer. And all of our clients were going to be these manufacturing, oil and gas type companies. So it was a piece of my education that I didn't really intend on using again, that fit its way perfectly into that role, which led me further to where I'm at now. So, but it's exactly like you said, it's kind of know what you want to do, but it's interesting to see how experience that you didn't know you would use really does help, as long as you start somewhere.
And one thing I need to add here is it's not just the degree itself. I think the experience you go through in architecture school, like the discipline you learn, like that, like all-nighters you have to take. It's like going through, I don't know, like something like going through army, and you come back and you feel like you can achieve so much if you go through like architecture school, and also the connection that that you gain through the network. Um, and don't think about it that, oh yeah, my friends, they go to engineering school, it's so much easier, 4 years, they don't have to take as many all-nighters, and they come and they start a start salary at 80,000 and then have to start with 40,000. It's just so much more you can do with architecture degree. It's not even, there's so much more opportunity. That's all I need to say.
Thank you, and thank you all for sharing it. There are so many things you can do with your degree, and it sounds like kind of when each of you had very impactful experiences that you had, whether it was traveling abroad or it was the first job you had at college, or even like something you picked up in a course. And a lot of times, I hear from students, how am I supposed to figure out what to do for the rest of my life? And I think a lot of you had the same advice of just try something, right? Like just start and have an experience, and you never know where it will lead. And I love that idea of designing your life. It's not just what you learn in the class, but it definitely applies to your career path too. And so this kind of leads us to some things that some of you were touching on already, but regardless of whether or not you are doing exactly architecture or whatever kind of traditional ideas we have about what design looks like, I'd love for you all to share a little bit about how you are applying the things that you learned in the classroom in the work that you're doing now.
I'll start.
You're all right, Bria. Did you want
Okay.
to go next?
Yeah, sure. I think one of the major things that the design process taught me is how to think and how to, like we already said, use all of your experiences as you go through life. And it teaches you this methodical design process. And originally, I was working in design, doing design work, but that didn't work out long term. But that experience with my degree and working in the industry designing, it really developed my design thinking and design process. And you never lose that design thinking process that you have and that you develop throughout those years. And so now I find myself applying it with entrepreneurship. So after getting my MBA, I went into other things that I was very passionate about. And that same design thinking process, I was able to apply to a skincare line that I developed, as well as an app that I'm currently developing. And so although I'm working in a different industry for my career, I'm still using what I learned as well as my MBA to put into practice things that I'm passionate about that can lead into entrepreneurship. And I know a lot of people who I graduated with went into entrepreneurship, whether it's a personal project or they started their own firm. That design thinking process that you go through, you can use it in so many different ways as you have more and more experiences throughout life. You still find yourself applying that design thinking process. So yeah, that's one of the ways that you will continually apply design throughout your life and throughout your career in different ways.
Also, I think design is all problem solving, and it really teaches, like, when you are a good designer, you're a good problem solver. And it also, like, it helps you, like, if you want to open a business, there's like so many problems you need to solve, and every single day, and it definitely helps you. In my business, I'm dealing with it all the time. And also, yeah, design itself, it helped us a lot because, again, like, I was competing with like traditional like sign companies that would only give the clients a bunch of 2D drawings, and then I would go and make them like Rhino models with renderings, and it would just, like, it was like impressive, and I had like advantage over other like sign manufacturers that they've been in business for 50 years. That's the way I look at it.
I was going to say exactly the same thing. One of our core values at my firm is proactive problem solving. And I think that if you've gone through a creative or design architecture curriculum, then you have been put to the test with your problem solving. Like, and it teaches also perseverance, which you need in any career, and especially if you're an entrepreneur, because if you want to start your own firm one day, or you want to start your own business, or like Brea, you're going to be a product, you're developing a product or an app or something like that, you have to have perseverance because you are going to fail a million times. And so I think even from our first critique, where I completely got my ass kicked and probably ended up in tears, and I say probably because I did, you just have to pick yourself back up and go. And I think that this program really teaches you to do that. And it's just through 4 years or 3 years or 5 years or however long you're there, you're making it through this course that is so impactful, and you're also making these relationships with the people that are in your cohort. So like Shannon and I, we keep in touch, and we keep in touch with a lot of people from our grad class. And so I think you go through this experience together, and it teaches you collectively to collaborate, perseverance, problem solving, all of those things you can take with you.
Something else I took for granted was the sketching. And I've realized over time it's come back more and more to me in so many different applications. Like if I have a giant whiteboard at work, I'm just such a visual person that I have to sketch out my process. And I remember, always just being annoyed or that I wasn't as good as other people or whatnot, but it's just something that has innately stayed throughout my career. And now I feel like it's an integral process in getting to a solution. So I would, if it feels annoying, or hopefully in the digital, things are so much more digital now, but hopefully that's something that y'all are still doing a lot of, because it's very valuable.
That's actually something that I was just thinking about too on my side with. I'm pretty far from design now and what my roles are, but one of the biggest takeaways I think from the degree and the program was how to, like you said, kind of communicate your ideas or visualize them and then communicate them, because that helps you just be so much more persuasive. And, you could have a great idea, but if you don't deliver it well, then it's not received well, and then you don't have as much credibility behind that idea. So that's one of the biggest things that I think has helped me the most from that degree, just in terms of, being able to deliver my ideas and kind of persuade people into seeing them the way that I do.
Yeah, for me, it's like really just the eye. Like you develop that design eye, and being able to apply that, like you can apply that to everything in your life. Like there's so many things that like line, square, rectangle has stuck with me my entire life. Like you apply that so often I'll get a presentation and I'm like, how is this picture like not centered? Like what is happening with it? What is happening here? And people notice these things. And it's like when you present something and it's not, you know, if something is just slightly off, like people can't tell necessarily, but they know, like, you know, like somebody knows, even if they don't even fully realize it. Like if I'm looking at a menu and I realize that like things aren't centered perfectly, it, you know, it's just not, people notice that and it lessens like what they're looking at. So if they see something and it's well put together, they're going to gravitate towards that and they don't even necessarily realize it, but everybody does. And so just having that eye has like gotten me so far in presentations, and like you can do so much with that. Like you actually learn so much about graphics while you're in school, like our boards, our presentations. It's like nowadays I do a lot of like menu design, and it's all of that has helped me. And same with just presentations for, you know, when I am doing like a design projects for clients or when I'm on site, just I do a lot of installation and just being able to look at a wall and know, oh, this picture is off by an inch, or oh, this should be, why isn't this lining up with this thing? Like you just need to be able to see these things. And that was something that you know, you learn in architecture school, and it has been for me the most invaluable resource.
Yeah, so clearly you all have, oh, I didn't mean to cut you off, Sarah.
Oh, no, sorry, I said the wrong word. We're good, go on.
Well, I was going to say, it sounds like you all, you know, clearly use a lot of transferable skills. And so if you're a student listening, I hope you hear this and kind of realize how much you have to bring to the table, regardless of where you go next, whether it's design thinking, that perseverance too. I talked to a lot of, you know, first semester students who are like, what did I get myself into? You know, all the way to having that eye, like you said, and being able to communicate your message, all amazing transferable skills. And so my last kind of preset question is really a two-part question before we open up to the student Q&A. And for students who especially are getting ready to graduate in this time of a pandemic, or maybe you're just, you know, realizing, you know, I think I like some aspects of this program, I might want to explore other things. What advice do you have for those students who are, you know, maybe starting to consider some alternative career paths, like ones we've talked about today, or even others that they may not see represented as much? And then the second part of that question is, what advice do you wish you had had when you were a student at U of H? So whoever wants to go first.
I'll go first on this one. I think about this a lot, honestly. And, you know, when you come out of school, I at least I was like this. I was sort of oblivious to not the world around me, but the state of the market. And so, as I mentioned earlier, you know, I took a job right out of school, and then shortly after the recession, the 07-08 recession hit, and it was brutal. So many people lost their jobs, and there's been cycles that throughout, you know, the last 10 plus years where this continues to happen. And so, you know, thankfully architects are always in demand. It's a very tough profession, and when the market is down, obviously jobs are down, and then, you know, the opportunities are more difficult. So I would, you know, it would not, you know, for me, I would say if there was a time, if you wanted to look at another degree in a down market, would make sense. Take that time when maybe jobs aren't as prevalent to look at other degrees. I would encourage y'all to really be familiar with what sort of economic state you're coming out in. If you're not, you probably already are, but just as I wasn't as knowledgeable, and it was a real eye-opener, you know, when you're, you know, seeing people lose their jobs and different things, and maybe start reading the HBJ or the Chronicle, or if you're not, it'll just help you get a pulse on, you know, the demand of new opportunities, or maybe you can catch other opportunities just by expanding your knowledge base.
Yeah, so obviously Shannon and I went to school together, same class, and I came out of grad school at the same time during the economic crisis, and I started my firm at the same time because, like Shannon, I was like, this seems like a good time to start a firm. Like, I was a little oblivious. Also, I do think that people that have pursued this degree, architecture or design, are gritty. And so we have a lot of grit, and we have, like I said, perseverance. And so even though you're coming out maybe of school at a difficult time, I think there's a lot of hope right now. And I think, I mean, 2020, who would have seen it but the home industry? And Sarah, I don't know if you see this, it looks like you do interiors too, but people are sitting at home and they are realizing they don't like their house. And so we're getting a lot of business, knock on wood. I always have to knock on wood, but we have stayed busy. So I think, and we're hiring still. So I am super hopeful and optimistic for 2021, especially because we've had great news in the last couple of weeks that we have vaccines coming out. So I'm hoping it's not like the housing bubble bursting in 2007 and 8. I don't think so. I think that that you guys are going to be just fine. But if you do want to look at alternative careers, or if you're getting your undergrad in architecture, I say keep going and get your master's in architecture. I think just having an undergrad degree is amazing and wonderful, and getting your master's is so concentrated. It's a very different experience than getting your bachelor's. So I would encourage you to stay the course and get your master's. I had friends that came out of school and went into law. So it's really what inspires you and gets you out of bed in the morning, what you're passionate about, pursue it.
Yeah, so Laura was saying it is, look, my mom actually works at Home Depot in Texas, and they've actually had the busiest year ever because everybody is redoing their houses right now. It's pretty crazy. But yeah, you should look at your market actually, because in Texas, it seems that things are still trucking along. People are moving, they're working. Whereas New York City, it's drastically different here. It's like, I think it's a bit scarier because there's a lot more people. We're far more condensed. We have to be a lot more careful with our surroundings. And this place, the city relies on tourism heavily, and a lot of people who, businesses can work remotely now. So it's just, the city is really emptied out. And like small businesses are closing left and right. It's kind of, people are really hopeful, definitely. Like, there's a good feeling in the air, especially after the election, but it's daunting, and like winter is a different thing here. So, definitely look at your market. And life does like come in waves. It's a lot of up and downs. And so, people are adapting here very quickly. It's like, usually I work in events mostly when I do production stuff. It's like all people-oriented, gathering, talking, social activities. And so things are quickly going digital, like, oh, how do you make digital selling rooms? How do you do online events? We make movies, a lot of film production. Like, film production is picking up heavily with COVID times because you can stream things, but you can't necessarily like do things in person. So other markets are definitely growing where other ones are shrinking, and you're having to adapt constantly. And so with freelance, it's like, this goes for everyone, I believe, is that you have to be adaptable, and, things will constantly ebb and flow. And that's how I feel.
Just to piggyback really quick on that, I think you're right. Like, take a look at your local market, because you're in Houston now doesn't mean or New York. If it, for any reason, just doesn't seem like it's a viable market for you at this moment, there are other markets that are going crazy. That's why we've opened an office in Aspen. We've been here historically for the last 8 years, but we've really committed because people are leaving New York and they're going to the Hamptons or the Berkshires or wherever. And people are leaving LA, they're leaving Dallas and Houston right now because of the pandemic, and they're coming to Aspen or Jackson Hole or Park City. So these secondary markets that have been popular in the past, but not as primary residences, are now becoming primary. So you may want to open your mind to other locations as well.
If you are job searching, you can also research counter-cyclical markets, so markets that actually do better when there's a downturn. And you can also look at which industries are doing well due to the pandemic. Like recently, we all know that the home industry is doing really well right now because interest rates are so low. But also, if you think out of the box, there's places like pest control businesses are really doing well right now because people are at home, and so they're noticing more that they have pests, whereas before they wouldn't know that they had pests because they were not really home much. So you have to kind of really think outside of the box and think about, okay, in this situation, which businesses would be doing better, and maybe I can aim towards that area. Another thing is definitely networking. I'm sure you all have heard about that before, but I can't stress enough how much networking and your reputation and getting your reputation out there really comes into play, because in a market, in a situation where people are really, really competing for jobs, it will help you if you have someone that will speak on your behalf to give you an opportunity. For me, that's how I ended up working at Shell Oil. I was actually in Austin at I don't know if it was the Texas Relays in Austin. And I just ended up talking with people. And through talking with people at the Texas Relays in Austin, I was able to make connections that landed me the internship that I did in 2013, which turned into my job for the next 4 years. So I would definitely, can't stress enough, networking, joining organizations in the industries that you want to work in, even if it's not a specific design or architecture organization, just joining the Greater Houston Partnership or whatever organizations that can get you networking with a lot of centers of influences around Houston can really, really be impactful in your career when it comes to landing a job opportunity. We can't just rely on Google search and Indeed and the Career Center. They're going to do the best they can, but there's jobs out there that you wouldn't even know about. So when I was in school, I would not have thought that the deep water exploration and production team at an oil and gas company needed a designer. I thought it was more engineers. Now, I did work very heavily with engineers, but they still needed a designer, someone that would help them think through the process, think through the fabrication, and produce these major large-scale models in design packets that were this thick on how to build and fabricate these manifolds and these subsea trees and all of these things. So networking is something that can really help you in this tough time. As well as, like Emily said, we learned so many different things through our design process, materials and methods and colors, and we learned so many different things that hone in on every single skill. Even like Shannon said, you're sketching. You never know where, just if you don't use your whole degree, one particular part of your degree can help you to find a job. Because I know people who just did sketching for somebody for an interim period in between looking for a job. Also take every opportunity that you can, even if it doesn't pay well or even if it doesn't pay at all. I know that that's not what you really want to do, but sometimes you just have to say yes to things because you never know where the opportunity can lead you or who you may meet. Just having a good reputation, doing things like that can really open up doors in the long term. So.
Yeah, I would say exactly that because my first role was not what I really thought I would be doing. And I graduated very recently, so I will say that the first time I was looking for a job, I think I sent out like hundreds of applications. I actually did a couple interviews, and I totally stand by what they say. It would take any interview that you can do because it's all practice, and then you get practice about the kind of questions they're going to ask, and a lot of times they'll get feedback of what they're really looking for. So that's something I was maybe a little too selective at first about interviews, and I was like, I don't know if that's a job I really fit with or anything like that, but I would say take any interview that you can. And then also, like Bria just said, the first position may not be the one for the rest of your life. It's likely not, but you're going to learn so much more, and you just get to keep stacking that. And that's something that I wish I had realized. And then with more experience, like I had 2 internships when I graduated, but like I said, I put out hundreds of applications and didn't really hear back from too many places. Whereas the second time around, when I figured out more what I wanted to do, and I was a little bit more selective about my search, it was a whole different experience for me. And also, like they said, I know that there are some like recreation right now, the weapon industry. There are so many industries that are actually on an up right now rather than a down. So you just got to find those.
And last thing, I would say it's okay to do work for free. Like if you find someone who has a project and you think you can get that job by doing a free job, just do it. I've done it. It brought me so many more projects, and also creates value in what you do. People notice that, and don't rush it. Things takes time, and after a while, people notice the value you have in your work. And also, it's not just what you know, it's who you know. So make as many friends as you can in the school. Like all those people that you're going to school with, those are the people like building this city in the future. Just be in your network.
Thank you, and thank you all for sharing. This is great, really great advice. So some things I heard were staying in touch with your peers, the importance of networking. Absolutely. There's something called the hidden job market that refers to the fact that 80% of jobs are never posted, only 20% are. So definitely, the way a lot of times we'll hear about these opportunities is through those kind of word of mouth experiences. And that directly connects to what a lot of you said around just have an experience, try something, whether it's an interview or a project, but try something and kind of see what happens and see where it takes you. So thank y'all. I have a lot of great notes here. I also heard a lot about resources, so really check the market, and the Houston Business Journal was mentioned, as well as the Greater Houston Partnership. Every city has some kind of business journal you can check out. One other resource I wanted to plug is called Workforce Solutions. So they work with individuals who are unemployed and do market reports every month, and there's reports available for every city. It's another great tool to use to see what's going on in different markets and what the trends are. So I know we have about 10 minutes left, and some of our panelists have things right after this. So I do want to just pause for a moment in case any of our panelists have to head out a little early, and just thank everybody so much for being here. So all of our attendees can kind of give you a virtual round of applause. Very excited to have had the opportunity to learn from you and hear your experience. So thank you so much for your time today.
I do have to drop, but if anybody wants to find me on LinkedIn or anything like that, has any questions industrial design related, I'm more than open to talk or answer any of them.
Thank you so much, Emily. We appreciate you being here.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Brings up a good point about LinkedIn, that if you don't have one, it's a really great networking tool.
100%. So when we're hiring, we look on LinkedIn. We post everything on AIA and on LinkedIn.
When I was looking for jobs when I was in New York, about a year after I graduated, I was like, oh, okay, I want to use my degree. This is like a weird thing I was thinking, but I was like, I need to use my degree or it's going to expire. So I was like, oh, it's time to start looking. So, which was also really funny because also I didn't finish my portfolio after I graduated. I just like completely took a break from architecture, actually. I just was like, I'm going to go focus on other things. And suddenly a year in, I was like, I miss design. Like I miss being creative. It's like I model, which is a different type of creativity, but I miss like a different type of having like control. Like you're very in control with architecture. You control your path, and I really missed that. So I was like, it's time for me to use my degree, get back into designing, that kind of world. And for me, I was like, I just started looking around randomly online. I looked on like DZing job board randomly and on Craigslist. And when I was in New York, I was just visiting a friend, and I just I could never manage to finish my portfolio. And one day I just sat down, I finished it in like 3 hours, and I just sent it out to all of these random places that were hiring, where I looked around, and I got like 3 interviews, and I just lied and I pretended I lived in New York City, even though I didn't. I told all these places I did. And I honestly wasn't expecting anything. Like, they were my first job interviews. I was actually about to go to Europe and go sign with an agency in Europe. And I did these interviews, and on a plane to Milan, I got 2 replies of people being like, hey, we would like to hire you. And I was like, oh, change of plans. And I like went and did a job, and literally found like a job on some a apartment on like a Facebook housing group, and just moved to New York in a weekend, like flew home a week after my job had started, and like just went with it. It was supposed to be a 3-month contract, and then my contract kept getting extended and extended. And the next thing I knew, I'd been here for like 2 years, and I was like, well, like, it's just, things move along, like, just get creative where you're looking. It doesn't, like, I think we think a lot about like AIA and LinkedIn, and those are 2 really great resources, but there's like so many random things out there that, especially if you're looking for outside the box jobs. Like, I almost took a job as a model maker, which I thought would have been really fun. I found that from some like really obscure job posting on Craigslist. And, it's just, there's a whole world out there, and don't be afraid to explore and try new things and ask around. And if you have art friends, be like, where do you look for jobs? Because sometimes that could actually work in your favor also. And just, keep an open mind.
Thank you. And I know we've got some really great questions in the chat, but I'm mindful of time. So for students who want to get connected with Alum, I want to give a quick plug to the Connection platform. So if you haven't already made a profile, whether you're an alum or a current student, please do. It's a great way to, like I said, just connect with other alum. I think of it as kind of like a LinkedIn just for the college. And then alum, I know a lot of you already did share, but if you don't mind sharing your LinkedIn profile information, or just ways that students can connect with you, I'm sure they would love to do that. So with that, I do want to be respectful of everyone's time and give you all time, at least a platform to connect. Yep, thank you, Sarah. She just posted the website for the Quad Connection. So definitely check that out. But do, like I said, I want to be mindful of everyone's time, and just thank our speakers again for being here, and thank you all, students and participants, for being part of this conversation. So if you're a panelist,
thanks, Lauren. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for being here, Laura.
See you soon. Bye, guys.
Bye. Bye, everyone. Shanna and Sarah, if you have time, we'd love to kind of hang back in Bria as well, and just check in with you, and we'll just kind of wait a minute for our attendees to head out for the day. But thank you all for being here, and keep an eye out for the next Alumni Association event.
Yes, thank you guys for having me. I'm very happy to be here and to have joined, and I hope I was helpful to everyone that was on the Zoom call today.
Yeah, feel free if anyone wants to reach out. We're always happy to help. Thank you, though, Lauren and Sarah, for organizing. It's great.
It's our pleasure. So if y'all are able to, if you've got time, we'd love to kind of stay back and debrief with y'all. If you've got to head out, also want to be respectful of schedules too.
As long as y'all don't mind if my kids run in here.
The beauty of work from home life, right?
The quarantine life. Woof.
I do have to head out, but I will make sure to share my information on the connection link.
Okay, sounds great. Thanks for being here, Bria.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you again, students, for joining, and for all of our participants. We hope you walked away with some really great ideas. We hope you have a good rest of your day. Reach out. Go ahead, Shannon.
I see Paul if he wants to hang out too. He's sneaking on mute.